Good evening. In the gilded halls of Buckingham Palace, where centuries of tradition blend uneasily with modern scrutiny, whispers have long been the currency of power. But on a quiet autumn evening, beneath chandeliers that have witnessed generations of royal intrigue, those whispers, according to palace insiders, seem to take on a sharper edge. At the heart of the alleged tension, Princess Catherine, the poised and widely admired Princess of Wales, and Laura Lopes, the daughter of Queen Camilla. And at the center of their supposed disagreement, perhaps the most emotionally charged symbols in royal history, the iconic jewels once worn by Diana, Princess of Wales. Princess Diana's jewelry collection is more than a display of wealth or royal tradition. It represents a deeply personal legacy, one tied to her humanitarian work, her style, and her enduring place in the hearts of millions. Among the most recognizable pieces are the sapphire engagement ring, now worn by Catherine, the lover's knot tiara, and a series of diamond and pearl pieces that have appeared at historic state events. Since her marriage to Prince William, Catherine has been seen as the natural custodian of many of these items. Each public appearance featuring Diana's jewels is carefully noted, analyzed, and celebrated by royal watchers around the globe. But as with all royal assets, the ownership and allocation of these treasures are more complex than they appear. With King Charles III's reign came a subtle reshaping of the monarchy. Queen Camilla, once a controversial figure, has gradually established her role within the institution. Alongside her, her children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, have maintained a relatively private but present connection to royal life. Laura Lopes, in particular, has largely stayed away from public duties, choosing a quieter life focused on her family and art interests. Yet, her proximity to the queen consort has inevitably placed her within the orbit of royal attention. In recent months, according to fictionalized palace sources for this story, conversations around royal heirlooms have reportedly resurfaced, particularly as the monarchy navigates its future identity. The supposed confrontation, if it can be called that, reportedly occurred during a private gathering at Clarence House. The event itself was described as informal, a small dinner attended by close family members. According to the narrative constructed by imaginative insiders, tensions began subtly. A remark, perhaps innocuous, perhaps pointed, was allegedly made regarding the historical allocation of certain jewels. It's said that Laura Lopes expressed interest in the broader accessibility of royal heirlooms, suggesting that some pieces could be shared across branches of the extended royal family. To an outside observer, such a comment might seem harmless, but within the deeply symbolic framework of royal tradition, it carried weight. Princess Catherine, known for her composure, is imagined to have responded with quiet firmness. These pieces, she is said to have remarked in this fictional account, carry not only historical value but personal significance. They belong to a legacy that must be respected. A question of legacy. At the core of this imagined tension lies a fundamental question: who owns history? For Catherine, Diana's jewels are more than adornments. They are reminders of a woman she never met, but whose presence continues to shape her role. Wearing them is both an honor and a responsibility, one that connects her to the past while defining her place in the future. For Camilla's family, however, the evolving monarchy may suggest a broader interpretation of tradition, one that adapts to changing times and relationships. This contrast between preservation and evolution forms the emotional backbone of the story. No piece better illustrates this tension than the lover's knot tiara. Commissioned in 1914 for Queen Mary and later associated strongly with Princess Diana, the tiara has become synonymous with royal elegance and emotional resonance. Catherine has worn it at several high profile events, often prompting comparisons to Diana. In this fictional narrative, the tiara becomes a focal point of discussion, not because anyone is attempting to claim it outright, but because it represents something intangible: continuity. For Catherine, wearing the tiara is a way of honoring Diana's memory. For others, it may symbolize the monarchy's shared heritage, one that extends beyond a single lineage. What truly transpired in that imagined room remains, of course, a matter of speculation. No raised voices, no dramatic ultimatums, just a quiet exchange, measured, polite, but undeniably charged. Those familiar with royal protocol understand that conflict rarely manifests openly. Instead, it unfolds through tone, phrasing, and subtle shifts in posture. In this story, Catherine's response is not confrontational but resolute. Laura's stance is not aggressive but curious, perhaps even pragmatic. Yet, even the smallest divergence in perspective can carry profound implications within the monarchy. One of the most fascinating aspects of royal life is the gap between public image and private experience. To the world, Princess Catherine embodies grace, stability, and continuity. Queen Camilla represents resilience and transformation. Their families, though distinct, are united under the crown. But beneath that unity lies a complex web of relationships, blended families, historical narratives, and evolving roles. This fictional scenario taps into that complexity, exploring what might happen when those layers intersect. It is impossible to discuss any aspect of the modern royal family without acknowledging the enduring influence of Princess Diana. Her legacy is both a blessing and a burden. For Catherine, it offers a roadmap, an example of compassion and connection with the public, but it also invites constant comparison. Every appearance, every gesture, every piece of jewelry is viewed through the lens of Diana's memory. In this context, the imagined conversation about her jewels takes on deeper meaning. It is not simply about ownership, it is about identity. As the monarchy continues to evolve, questions about tradition, relevance, and inclusivity become increasingly important. Should royal heirlooms remain strictly within direct lines of succession, or should they be viewed as shared symbols of a broader family? There are no easy answers. In this fictional account, Catherine represents continuity, a commitment to preserving the legacy of those who came before. Laura Lopes represents change, a willingness to rethink established norms. Both perspectives are valid. Both reflect the challenges of navigating a centuries old institution in a modern world. As expected, the palace remains silent on any such claims, real or imagined. Official statements, when they come, are carefully worded and rarely address internal dynamics. This silence, however, often fuels speculation. In the absence of confirmation, stories like this one take on a life of their own. They invite readers to imagine what might be happening behind the scenes, to consider the human emotions that exist within even the most structured environments. Ultimately, this story is less about a specific event and more about the narratives we construct around the royal family. We are drawn to stories of conflict and resolution, of tradition and change, of legacy and identity. The image of Catherine standing firm in defense of Diana's memory resonates because it aligns with how many perceive her role. The idea of Laura Lopes questioning tradition adds a layer of intrigue, reflecting broader societal conversations. In reality, the royal family continues its duties, attending events, supporting charities, and representing the nation. Whether or not such a confrontation ever occurred, the themes it explores remain relevant. How does a family balance history with progress? How do individuals navigate roles defined by expectation? And how do symbols, like a tiara or a ring, carry meaning across generations? The imagined exchange between Princess Catherine and Laura Lopes serves as a window into the complexities of royal life. It reminds us that behind the titles and traditions are individuals, each with their own perspectives, values, and connections to the past, and it highlights the enduring power of Diana's legacy, a legacy that continues to shape not only the monarchy, but the stories we tell about it. Great. Let's continue the story and deepen the tension, relationships, and intrigue. The morning following the alleged exchange at Clarence House dawned quietly over London, but within palace walls, the atmosphere, at least in this imagined account, carried a subtle chill. Princess Catherine began her day as she always did, early, structured, and focused. A briefing folder awaited her, detailing upcoming engagements, charity updates, and correspondence. Yet, according to this fictional narrative, her mind was elsewhere, not on confrontation, but on consequence. because in royal life, even the smallest moments ripple outward. Meanwhile, Laura Lopes returned to her own home, far removed from the rigid rhythms of palace protocol. To her, the evening may have felt like an honest conversation, perhaps even overdue. But to those within the institution, honesty can sometimes be mistaken for disruption. Later that day, Catherine is imagined to have met privately with Prince William. Their partnership, often described as one of the monarchy's greatest strengths, is built on trust and shared understanding. Unlike previous royal generations, they operate as a team, discussing not just public duties but private pressures. What matters, William is said to have reflected in this fictional retelling, is not the jewels themselves, but what they represent. Catherine, thoughtful as ever, reportedly agreed. They're not objects, she might have said. They're symbols, and symbols shape how people see us. William understood this better than anyone. After all, these were not just royal heirlooms, they were his mother's. Across London, Queen Camilla is imagined to have received a version of the story, not through official channels, but through the subtle network of aides and long-standing confidants that surround any senior royal. Camilla, shaped by years of scrutiny and resilience, is not easily rattled. In this creative narrative, her response is measured. She didn't mean offense, Camilla might have said of her daughter. She was simply asking a question. But even as she defended Laura, Camilla would understand the sensitivity of the subject. Diana's legacy is not just history, it is living memory, especially for William and Harry, and anything connected to it must be handled with care. At the heart of this unfolding story lies a divide that is rarely acknowledged openly, the blending of two royal narratives. On one side, the lineage of Diana, deeply tied to public affection, emotional transparency, and modern royal identity. On the other, the path of Camilla, rooted in endurance, discretion, and gradual acceptance. Both women, in their own ways, reshaped the monarchy, but their legacies do not always intersect comfortably. Catherine, stepping into Diana's symbolic role, carries the weight of expectation. Laura, as Camilla's daughter, exists just outside the formal structure, close enough to observe, distant enough to question. In the days that follow, attention, both imagined and speculative, returns to the jewels. Not just the famous sapphire ring or the lover's knot tiara, but lesser known pieces, brooches, bracelets, and earrings that have rarely been seen in public since Diana's passing. In royal archives, each item is cataloged meticulously. Their histories are recorded, their usage carefully considered, but their emotional value cannot be documented so easily. To Catherine, wearing these pieces is an act of continuity. To others, they may represent a shared heritage that belongs to the institution as a whole. This difference in interpretation fuels the underlying tension of the story. In the weeks that follow, within this fictional narrative, royal watchers begin to notice something subtle. At a formal reception, Catherine appears wearing a different tiara, one less associated with Diana. At another event, she opts for contemporary pieces rather than historic ones. To most, these choices go unnoticed, but to those who follow royal symbolism closely, they raise questions. Is it coincidence, or is it a deliberate signal? Though no official acknowledgement is ever made, the media, always attuned to even the faintest hint of royal intrigue, begins to speculate. Headlines in this imagined scenario remain cautious. Royal jewelry choices spark conversation. Changing traditions in a modern monarchy? The meaning behind Catherine's latest look. No mention of confrontation, no direct references, but the narrative begins to take shape. Because in the world of royalty, perception is everything. A private reconciliation? Amid the speculation, there are whispers, again, purely fictional, of a second meeting. This time, smaller, more intentional. Catherine and Laura perhaps brought together not by circumstance but by design. The setting is quieter, the tone calmer. I didn't mean to overstep, Laura is imagined to have said. And I didn't mean to seem guarded, Catherine might have replied. In this version of events, the conversation shifts, not about jewels, but about understanding, because beneath titles and traditions, both women share something fundamental. They are navigating roles they did not entirely choose. Watching from a distance, both literally and figuratively, is King Charles III, a monarch deeply aware of history, symbolism, and the delicate balance required to maintain unity. In this story, Charles does not intervene directly, but his influence is felt through subtle guidance, through the expectations he sets, through the example he provides. His reign, still defining itself, depends on cohesion within the family, and cohesion often requires quiet compromise. As the narrative unfolds, a broader question emerges. What is the future of the royal jewelry collection? Will it remain tied to specific roles and lineages? Or will it evolve into something more flexible, reflecting the changing nature of the monarchy? There is no clear answer, but the conversation, fictional though it may be, mirrors real world discussions about tradition and adaptation. Catherine's resolve. At the center of it all stands Catherine, calm, composed, intentional. In this story, her actions are not driven by conflict, but by clarity. She understands the significance of her role, not just as Princess of Wales, but as a bridge between past and future. Every choice she makes, every piece she wears, tells a story, and she chooses those stories carefully. For Laura Lopes, the experience, imagined here, may serve as a reminder of the complexities of royal life. Though not a working royal, she is part of the family. And being part of the family means navigating its history, its sensitivities, and its unspoken rules. Her perspective, curious, perhaps more modern, adds an important dimension to the story. Because change often begins with questions. As with so many royal stories, the truth, if there is one, remains elusive. There are no recordings, no official accounts, only interpretations, speculation, imagination. And perhaps that is what makes stories like this so compelling. They invite us to look beyond the surface, to consider the human dynamics within an institution that often feels larger than life. In this continuing fictional narrative, the confrontation is not a clash, but a moment that reveals deeper themes. Legacy versus evolution, symbol versus ownership, public image versus private reality. And at its heart, a simple truth. Even within palaces, people are still people. By the time a third week passed within this fictional narrative, the story had begun to evolve beyond quiet speculation. What started as a private exchange, subtle and contained, now seemed to echo far beyond palace walls. Not because anyone confirmed it, but because royal stories rarely need confirmation to grow. Across social media, among commentators, and within the ever watchful world of royal analysis, a narrative had taken shape. A question of legacy, identity, and who truly carries the memory of Princess Diana forward. And once such a narrative begins, it rarely fades quickly. Though entirely speculative, this imagined situation begins to generate public conversation. Supporters of Princess Catherine see her as the rightful bearer of Diana's legacy, graceful, respectful, and deeply aware of the symbolism she carries. To them, the idea of protecting Diana's jewels feels not only appropriate but necessary. These aren't just royal pieces, some commentators might argue. They're part of Diana's story, and Catherine understands that. Others, however, entertain a different perspective. They question whether the monarchy, in its modern form, should move toward a more inclusive interpretation of its history, one that allows different branches of the family to share in its symbols. Why should legacy be limited? This side might ask. Isn't the monarchy evolving? And just like that, a private moment, real or imagined, becomes a broader cultural conversation. No royal story, especially one tied to Diana, remains confined to Britain. In this fictional continuation, attention shifts briefly across the Atlantic toward Prince Harry. Though physically distant from the royal core, Harry's connection to his mother's legacy remains deeply personal and profoundly emotional. In this imagined narrative, sources suggest that Harry becomes aware of the discussion, not through official channels, but through the same global media cycle that reaches everyone. His reaction? Quiet, measured, but not indifferent. Because for Harry, Diana is not history, she is memory. While William views Diana's legacy through the lens of duty and continuity, Harry's connection is often portrayed, both in reality and in this fictional story, as more emotional, more immediate. In this narrative, Harry is imagined to reflect privately. It was never about the jewels. To him, the idea that Diana's legacy could become a subject of debate, even symbolically, feels unsettling, not because of ownership, but because of meaning. Yet, true to the distance he has chosen, Harry does not intervene, not publicly, not directly. Instead, his perspective lingers at the edge of the story, a reminder that Diana's legacy is not singular. It belongs to different people in different ways. Back in London, life at Kensington Palace continues with its usual rhythm of engagements, planning, and public appearances. But beneath that rhythm, in this imagined account, there is awareness. Catherine and William understand that perception is shifting, not dramatically enough to cause concern, but enough to notice. And in royal life, noticing is everything. A carefully chosen appearance, then comes a moment, small but significant. At a high profile diplomatic reception, Princess Catherine steps into the spotlight once again. This time, however, her choice of jewelry draws particular attention. Instead of the lover's knot tiara, she wears a different piece, elegant, historic, but not directly associated with Diana. The message, if there is one, is subtle. She is not retreating from Diana's legacy, but she is not leaning into it either. It is balance, and balance in monarchy is power. Royal watchers, always attuned to symbolism, begin to interpret. Some see it as a sign of sensitivity, an acknowledgement of ongoing conversations. Others view it as a strategic move, reinforcing Catherine's identity as an individual rather than a reflection of Diana. And some, of course, see nothing at all. Because not every choice is a statement, but in royal life, every choice can become one. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla continues her role with characteristic steadiness. In this fictional telling, she does not address the situation directly, but her influence is felt in quieter ways through conversations, through tone, through the subtle shaping of how the family moves forward. Camilla understands better than most what it means to exist within public scrutiny. She knows that time and consistency can reshape perception. And so, rather than react, she allows the moment to pass. For Laura Lopes, the experience, imagined here, becomes something of a turning point, not dramatic, not life altering, but clarifying. She begins to understand that within the royal sphere, even casual questions can carry unintended weight, that history is not just remembered, it is protected. And that proximity to the crown, even without a formal role, comes with its own complexities. In this story, she steps back slightly, not out of discomfort, but out of awareness. If there is one truth that emerges from this fictional narrative, it is this: the monarchy does not confront tension directly, it absorbs it, it reshapes it, it moves forward without acknowledgement, because its strength lies not in reaction, but in continuity, a legacy that endures. And what of Diana, at the center of it all, beyond the imagined conversations, beyond the speculation, beyond the symbolism? Her presence remains, not in conflict, not in division, but in memory. Every time Catherine wears one of her pieces, that memory is renewed. Every time her name is spoken, that legacy continues. And perhaps that is the most important truth of all. In this final chapter of the story, the confrontation fades, not into resolution, but into perspective. Because what began as a moment between two individuals becomes something larger, a reflection on how institutions evolve, a meditation on how legacy is preserved, a reminder that symbols carry power but also responsibility, and above all, a story about people navigating roles shaped by history.